people need to feel connected, right? And once you lose that connection with the individual, it's really tough for them, as being remote, to not have human contact and human connection. It is one of the key things for us to be able to survive, right? All right. Good to go?
Yeah.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Brews and Buzzwords. And today we're going to be talking about the hottest topic of the last 18 months, which is remote work. So today, my guest is our very own resident team lead on design and creative, Emma, we flew her in actually from Ireland for this particular conversation. So welcome, Emma, to
Thanks.
Brews and Buzzwords, all the way from over
Ireland.
the pond. Because we're talking about remote work and you've been our most remote employee to date, why don't we talk about and start with, why is that important? Why is having that flexibility of working remotely, why was that important for you?
Well, it was extremely important in terms of being able to keep working with NVISION and keep this relationship that we have created. So originally when I decided to go home, that was the first thing I think I said to you was, I don't want to leave NVISION. I want to move back to Ireland, but yeah, I'd love to keep this working. And I think as soon as we had that dialogue, the two of us were like, we can make this work. It doesn't matter where you are. We can make it work. So I think that's what was so important, was no matter where the location was, where I was in terms of being in Ireland, we could still have that same relationship that we had already created over the year where I worked here. So I think, it was being able to go home to my family, but keep this, what we already had created.
Awesome. So we're going to get to that, the importance of family and connect, having a sense of comfort in the areas you work and why you would opt to work from home. So just to set the platform a little bit, so we can give everybody a bit of background. So you had come to Toronto with a work visa because you're very curious and you wanted to explore Toronto and Canada. So Emma was actually here and you had applied for a designer role with the agency while you were in Toronto.
Yeah.
But when you initially started, we had already had a fairly decent work from home kind of model rolling. Obviously, the pandemic took it to an extreme where it was completely remote.
Yeah.
And in your case, you were not only remote, you were homesick and you went back home.
Yeah.
And now you're back here. So I want to talk about, when you were here to start in Toronto, like the office is probably, to give people, the audience here, some context, about 20 minutes or so from downtown Toronto. We're just north. Did that make a difference to you? Like having remote capability, but also the ability to come in, was that important to you?
Yeah, definitely. It was 100% important. Even just knowing maybe 2 to 3 days a week I could be in the office, but then the other days I was at home. It was like knowing I would have that social part of the week where I would see my colleagues 1 or 2 days and just chat, have a drink of coffee, whatever. But then also on days where I was like, okay, I get up and I can do my work at home and focus on what I need to do. It was great having that balance. I loved having the balance. And I think then it was definitely an adjustment period going from that to 100% remote. I think going home knowing that it was going to be like not seeing my colleagues, it was going to be a bit tough. But yeah, I think having that aspect of being able to work remote and then also work from home was hugely important, and it really did. I didn't realize that I needed to have that balance until I had it, and then I was like, I love this, being able to do both.
Right.
So it was once I never had it before working here, and then once I had it I was like, I love this, both aspects of it, working from home and working in the office.
I think keeping it voluntary has been important for us. Obviously we've learned a lot in the last couple of years with the pandemic, but so having that flexibility and that opportunity to come into an office when you feel like you need to see your colleagues, or potentially, I would suspect, for important meetings. What did you find, if any, did you find that there was any challenges with like being from home? And I know like you work for NVISION and I'm the CEO, so like any distractions?
Maybe a few. No, it was like, I think I also find that I can work better sometimes when I just can put on my headphones and just work through it. But definitely getting into the remote working at home, it was just such a change from not being in the office. So it definitely was a bit of a adjustment. I don't know if I answered that question. Sorry.
Well, I think what I was trying to get to is like working from home when you had the opportunity to work in the office, because we're still in that time frame. Mm-hmm. What sorts of challenges did you have when you were at home, if any? Maybe you were like, no, I kind of liked it. It was cool. I had no issue.
I think I did I think I kind of straight away, I was like, I kind of like this. It was like, but I also knew then that I was going into the office the following day.
Right.
So it was the balance at the start. It was like, I knew I was working from home that one day. It was 100%, but the next day I was going to be in and see everyone.
So what about, okay, so let's take it to the extreme then, which was the most recent scenario.
Yeah.
Where, you were here and you had decided, thankfully, just prior to the pandemic, that you were ready to go home because you hadn't seen your family in a long, long time.
Yeah.
So now you're home.
Yeah.
And you are exclusive in a...
Completely.
What's the town that you are in Ireland?
It's called Cavan.
Cavan.
I
think I said that wrong.
Yeah, you kind of.
So you're in the place you're in, which is very remote, an hour and a half north of Dublin.
An hour and a half into the Midlands.
Midlands.
Yeah.
So now you're remote, where the opportunity to not participate in face-to-face activity is kind of not there anymore.
Yeah.
Let's start there before we get to pandemic and what remote work meant then. So what was that like for you? Because I know you and I have had many conversations about that short period of time.
So it was definitely a big change going from not only being able to live in a city to living in the middle of Ireland where there isn't a lot going on in Cavan. Yeah, so it was a big adjustment not only on the remote working, but it was also moving from city to remote Ireland. So it was like double on both ends. It was like remote living and then also remote working. So then, I think the first few weeks, it was the lead up to Christmas. It was the excitement of being home. Yeah. Excitement of being home, seeing my family, and Christmas was great. And then it was January, and then it was really, okay, this is remote working. And it was probably like the first 2 or 3 weeks, I was like, then I started to miss that interaction of coming into the office, and even
the novelty has worn off. The holidays are over.
Exactly.
Reality's setting in.
I was proper like, okay, now I know I'm home now. Like it's proper settled in.
Right.
And it was that adjustment period of getting used to just being at home and not going into the office, which took a while to get used to. And then I think I figured out very early on that I need to set boundaries in terms of I have a certain place where I go when I work, and it's not, I can't bring it into the sitting room or bring it into the kitchen or bring it into different rooms. I have my office. I work in my office and it stays there. So I needed that boundary of, it was kind of like going into the office.
Sure.
Where it was outside of home. So I think once I figured that out, I was like, I need to set these boundaries quick, because it was slowly just starting to be like, my God, this is where I work, this is where I live, everything is done in this house, what is happening? So I figured out early January, and he set strong boundaries. It was definitely an adjustment period, and then we always have our touch points. So it was like I would always be on phone calls with everyone during the day. I was still seeing everyone, so it was like still that social aspect. And then we started to get closer to the pandemic hitting, and once the pandemic hit, I was starting to get to that point where I was like, I want to see people. I want to come back to Toronto and see everyone. Like it was like that social aspect. And then everyone was remote.
You mentioned something really, really interesting to me, which I also agree with, which is boundaries. Mm-hmm. And because when you're working from home, and I love coming to the office, it's just the nature of how I operate best. Having boundaries, because I did have to work from home during the pandemic, and all of a sudden work blends very naturally into life, and life blends into work, and it's like, how can I accomplish and get gratification from achieving something? Because in my household, most of our audience knows I've got 4 kids and my wife, and so it's always pandemonium. And I know you're living with your family and there's stuff going on, so there's easy distractions. So But there's also the work distraction that all of a sudden you've put in a 12-hour day and you don't even know it. And you've missed out on an important family event or something. So that blending and creating those boundaries, I think, is a great bit of advice for people to say, these are my hours. This is where I work. I've got a place that I go to work, right? Which is what you did with your office at your home. So that was helpful for you, I suspect.
Yeah. Once I was like, everything is in there, working in there, it did create more of that.
And not only
going to work.
Did you do that, you decorated the office and you painted to make it a little more comfortable for you.
I did.
Which we also all know about. Now you all know about.
Yeah.
Emma is actually an interior painter as well.
Yeah.
So that blending and that separation is really important. Now, the other thing I want to note is Toronto and Ireland, there's a 6-hour time gap.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious to get your thoughts initially on how you felt you were going to handle that difference in time zone.
At the start, I was kind of like, I don't know what this is going to be like.
Right.
More so from meetings and things like that. I was like, I get up when it's 4 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning here and I'm starting my day, and then later into the afternoon I was starting to see everyone. And at the start it was nice to have them few hours to really focus and get my work done, and then it was kind of like the second half of my day is meetings. But I didn't know how it was going to work out at the start. And then I think everyone was really respectful of the time difference. It wasn't like they didn't take
Were you worried about it at all at the beginning?
At the start I was.
You're like,
I was
these guys are going to get me to work till 9 o'clock or midnight every day.
I was like 8 o'clock in the evening, 9 o'clock, I would be in meetings. But everyone did. They were like, it's 5 hour time difference. Like, it's not. They knew it was 7, 8 o'clock in the evening for me. And I think I had a call with Mark one day and he's like, okay, when do you want your cutoff for meetings? And then I was just like, 5:30, 6. And that's my cutoff. So then I can work 10 to 6.
Right.
And it's my norm, like start at 10 in the morning. I have my morning for myself, and 6 in the evening finishing up, I still have my evening. So the time difference actually worked out pretty well. And I actually ended up liking starting that little bit later in the morning and getting out and going for my run and starting the day right. And then 6 o'clock, been able to finish up. It actually worked out really well. I was at the start a little bit apprehensive. I was like, I don't know what this is going to go like. But yeah, it took a while to settle into it. And then I know everyone was really respectful of it, that it just made it a lot easier.
So was that important for you? Like, let's say, for the audience here, if the hours that are being requested of you to work, had we said to you, sorry, you're working Eastern Standard Time hours, would that have been a decision-making factor for you to depart?
It would have been, it would have been tough. It would have been tough because it would have been starting at 12 in the day and finishing at 8 at night. And it wouldn't have maybe been a decision factor where I'd be like, I can't do this, I'm going, but it would have been very tough to work in that Eastern time zone. For sure. So I think being able to stick to my time, stick to Ireland hours, did make a big decision to why I am still here today, 3 years down the line. As much as I was getting used to working remote, I was like, I miss seeing people on a daily basis. And then the pandemic hit and then everything was stopped. Yeah. Everyone was remote. And I think in some way kind of made it a little bit easier for me then, because we had our huddles twice a week. Yep. And we were talking, it was like everyone was in Ireland nearly. Because everyone was on.
It didn't make a difference where you were at that point?
It didn't make a difference.
It was a time zone difference, which we had already worked out those kinks.
Exactly. So it was like, there's no going up to Dublin and going to the office. And everyone was just remote. So it did some way make it a little easier for me moving home to Ireland and being completely remote, because we had our...
Made it easier for me too, to be honest. Because even with our other remote workers, it was like, it got to the point where it didn't matter where you were. Yeah. Because we trust our staff. Mm-hmm. We're all professionals. We knew the work was getting done. So what difference did it make where you were? So it kind of made life easier for us too, because it was like, we're not worried about Emma feeling lonely anymore or alone in... Everyone is in the same boat. Yeah. Right, yeah.
So it was kind of like everyone's in the same boat. it did make it a little bit easier. It was like, yeah, okay, I'm not going back up to Dublin. And we have our touch points during the week where we all just chat about everything, pandemic and normal life. So it was kind of like I had that social aspect of being in Toronto. It was I might as well have been in Toronto working remote.
Right. And well, most times it felt like you were. Because you were, we had gotten an understanding of how to accommodate one another. Mm-hmm. So we knew your hours, you knew our hours. Sure. We knew that we had to forecast and schedule things responsibly, which we do now to this day. So when you would come on, you could have said, I'm sitting in Toronto.
Yeah.
It would have been no different.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So outside of the accent, of course, which is a dead giveaway for you.
Yeah, just a little bit.
But aside from that, I think with regards to now, 18, 19, 20 months, whatever we're into it, you're here in Toronto.
Back in Toronto.
Some of the things that, we as an agency want to continue doing is accommodating our staff to make sure that their wellness, their well-being, their personal aspirations are being, accommodated. And I know, you're like a exploratory person.
Yeah.
You love to see the world, which is amazing. So I know having you here again and having that accommodation to have you here and that flexibility as an employee, do you want that sort of flexibility as well from your employer? Was it important to you to be in Toronto this week or this month? I guess you're here for a month.
Here for the month.
So was that important to you to be like, hey, I have this opportunity?
Yeah.
And the company's taking care of
100%.
all of it for me, where their flights are taken care of and stuff. Is that important? And curious why? Why would that be important for you?
It kind of, just as soon as we started talking about coming back over for the month, I was like, 100%. There's no question about it. I'm coming back for the month. And been able to kind of just pack up my bag, come to Toronto and just continue to work as normal. It was like I was working from home. Everything was still the same. Yeah. Just pack it up, came to Toronto, and it's that flexibility of knowing, okay, I can pack my bag and go there or move there and work from there. And it's that security of knowing it's still going to be able to work from wherever I am is hugely important.
I guess in our case where we've worked together for 4 years and whatever, would you have had put in a request to say, hey, would you fly me out? Or would that have been a kind of a difficult thing or a conversation to have? Yeah. Or was it much easier when I just said, hey, I'm going to fly you out?
It was definitely easier when you just said, I'm going to fly you out. Yeah. But I think, probably would have been a bit more of a difficult one to be like, do you want to fly me in? But it was when you just contacted me and you were like, okay, we're flying you in for the month of October. It was definitely a lot easier.
From the employer's perspective, going back to, your values, when you value your employees and you have the opportunity, and it's not like to say that everyone should do this all the time, but, we have our retreat coming up. We do it annually. It's a big deal for us. We missed out on that last year, and nothing makes me happier to see all of us together as employees because we spent so much time this last year and a half on Zoom and Hangouts and virtuals. And it's like, when you see somebody face to face, especially,
it's so much different.
It's so different. Yeah. And it's so nice to be able to do that. And truthfully, we would do it all the time for you and bring you in when it made sense and when you were ready to do that. But so I know we've been talking a lot about remote and, how the last year and a half has been. I want to get into really quickly some of the recommendations that you have being, having worked remote pretty much exclusively for a while now. What are some of the recommendations you would have for somebody working remote? What are sorts of things that people can take into consideration to keep them focused on not only on the work, but focused on life? Yeah. And I think we touched on that a little bit with boundaries, but is there anything else?
I think we've had a few conversations about this even when I moved home, in terms of we have our touch point every 2 weeks and you'd be like, how's it going? I think you were just as curious to see how are you getting on, because it's a big change. And from the start, I kind of realized, okay, it's very easy to fall into the pattern of when you're working remote, everything is work.
Right.
So yeah, the boundary was obviously hugely important in terms of your workspace. So it was like, okay, once I'm in my office, I'm working, that's it. But then it was also finding the time after that to focus on other little things. So once the pandemic hit, I was like, little projects, for example, doing up the office, which you heard a lot about when I was doing it. And little side projects that have nothing got to do with work, but you can still do them from home. Obviously, you have to do them from home. So photography as well. I love photography.
And you do beautiful photos.
Thanks. So then it's just like having them boundaries between your work life is your work life, and you still need to have your own personal life in terms of going for a walk in the morning, getting out, doing some yoga. I remember telling you when I started to do yoga in the morning.
Yes.
So it's just, finding other things and separating yourself from your work hours. At home is your work hours, separating it so you have your other personal projects and time for you.
Those same words resonate with me because I try to obviously create boundaries. I've got the kids at home and all sorts of activities in their lives, and I want to be there for my kids and my wife, but I also have to decompress and unplug. And much like you would go for your walks, as did I, and you would do your yoga, I'd hit the gym, or I'd pick up my guitar and, play for half an hour just to break the pattern of continuously feeling like I'm tethered to my computer, right? So I think that's a great bit of advice in terms of, boundaries. Was it important for you? You mentioned this and I want to touch on it really quick. Was it important for you, for your employer to reach out to you regularly like we do?
Yeah.
For those one-on-ones and just those conversations we rarely would talk about work.
Yeah.
Truth be told, right? Like
we wouldn't.
We wouldn't talk about work.
Yeah.
It would just be like, what's going on?
Yeah. It was, because I think even when I left to go home, we had the conversation where we're like, we're going to be completely honest about how this goes. Like, this is going to be such a change.
Yeah.
And then we had our one-on-ones every 2 weeks. And it was always just, how's it going? I think you were kind of curious as well, like, how are you settling in? So it was having that open dialogue to be like, okay, yeah, I'm struggling a little bit with being completely remote, or this is working really well. It was hugely important to for me to be kind of like, okay, George knows if I'm finding it hard. So yeah, definitely was hugely important.
Yeah, and the reverse holds true for me as well. Like, yes, I was curious extremely because you were an extreme case of remote worker. Yeah. For us anyways, right? So obviously having that touch point with you to make sure you're doing okay. Like, that was important for me.
Yeah.
And I think it should be important for all employers to check in with their staff, regardless of the hierarchy of, wherever it's, if you have a relationship with somebody, you want to make sure you're syncing with them regularly to make sure they're doing okay. Is there anything you can help them with? Which I would always ask is I would, or we'd explore whatever, what's going on in life. You were going mountain climbing and all kinds of stuff that you would do, right? And obviously for me, the Irish ties for me are my wife and her heritage and coming from Ireland. So I was always curious to know where are you going in Ireland? What's there to do? So there was a natural draw for me as well.
Yeah.
But that might not be there for everybody. But I think the one key factor is people need to feel connected, right? And once you lose that connection with the individual, it's really tough for them, as being remote, to not have human contact and human connection. It is one of the key things for us to be able to survive, right? So I think for our audience, it's important for them to appreciate that if you are working remote, there are ways to work it, even in the most extreme, where Emma's in Ireland and we're here in Toronto. Regardless of geographic location, you can make it work. There are just some subtle things you need to do. 1, keep comm lines open. 2, make sure that the employee feels cared for and you're still looking out for them as if they were here. And if you have the opportunity to get together, right, once a year, once a quarter, whenever, make sure you do that. So I am going to fly out to see Emma in Ireland, which I've told her many times. So I'm going to have to make a trip out that way, which I can't wait. But thank you for being here. Thank you for being an incredible employee. And I can't wait to see where the rest of this remoteness takes us.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think we're going to have some stories in the future. So awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching this video. If you like what you saw today, hit the subscribe button, like the video, and share it with somebody who you find will get value out of what you watched today.